What does it mean to break a story?
So breaking a story is how you figure out what all the actual scenes are in an episode, whether it's your own pilot you're writing at home or whether it's an episode of a show that you're working on. And there are different methodologies about how to do it. I can tell you my favorite methodology of doing it, which is and this is a combination of ways I've seen it done in multiple rooms that like, now this is the system that I like. So first of all, I think it's just a question of what did we think our main characters would be doing in this episode, right? And if you're doing a pilot, it's like, what is the story I want to tell about my main characters? And you can, on note cards or on a whiteboard, as simply as, I need Niceole to figure this out. I need, Adam to go here. I need, we need conflict between the mother and daughter to get us to the place we need to be in the next episode. Big ideas like that. They don't have to be super specific. It's just like, here are things we think our characters need to do. And especially if you're working on staff, right, and you're in a writer's room, the next part of that is, do we owe anything from the last episode? Was there stuff that we thought we were going to include in that script that we didn't? Do we still need it? Does it go here? So you have that conversation. And then you look at the episode coming up and like, have we set up everything we need to for that? Or do we owe something in this episode to make sure that we get to episode 6, clean and nobody's like, what? Where'd that come from? So to me, those are all the starting conversations. And once you do that, you kind of have a loose shape of the episode, right? You have, say, 5 things that your leading man has to deal with, like 5 scenes with your leading man, 3 scenes that are about his relationship with his leading lady, maybe 2 scenes of the leading lady's story on her own. And then, we have to set up this plot point that's going to pay off in episode 6. We want to do a B story about this set of secondary characters. And you're just talking it through. What is it? Once you have that, you can start to really talk about what's happening in those actual scenes. So it's like, okay, in the scene where Nicole's going to get the document and she's going to be super pissed off about it, like, what is she doing? Where do we find her? Is she in her morning routine? Is she on the phone? Like, you're really talking that through, because if she's on the phone, maybe she's saying something that's going to set up one of those B stories we need later, right? You can see if you can make connective tissue between that scene and a scene that needs to happen later. And then what does that paperwork mean? Why is she so angry about it? Is she screaming at someone? Is she throwing a fit in the room by herself? Like, what is it? So you really sort of nail down what's happening in that scene. And you do that for every one of those moments that you've already talked about. And then once you have them all fleshed out, and how many scenes are in an episode will vary between what show you're on. I would say it has been my experience that if you have more than 35 scenes, your script's probably going to be too long, because you want to be able to write, the description that the art department needs to figure out what they're decorating. And you need to, if there's a specific costume thing you need costumes to do, you got to describe it and that kind of stuff. So you need some room to play with those descriptions or with a long exchange of dialogue. And so say now you have your 35 scenes. Well, now you got to figure out what order they go in. So that's the next stage of the break, is to say, okay, well, I think that one we have here is the perfect act out for Act 2. So you move it to the bottom of Act 2. And then it's like, okay, well, we know this is the end of the episode, so we're going to move this here. And we know this is the first scene that we want to do. And you just literally start moving the cards or writing on the board to put the things in order. And then you end up with an episode of television. And then that doesn't necessarily mean your work is done, right? Especially if you're staffed. You're going to pitch stuff along the way. Like the day you do that big overview conversation, your showrunner comes in, if they were off doing other things, and the room will pitch him the stuff on the board, or her, and they'll be like, oh, I love all that. I'm not so sure about this. Maybe come up with some alts for that. So you keep, doing the work in each process until you get to that. We have 35 scenes in order that feels like an episode. And then the writer of the episode or the number 2 in the room will pitch through the whole episode for the showrunner. And the showrunner will sometimes just love it and like, great, go write an outline. And sometimes the showrunner's making adjustments as you're pitching and being like, no, I love that. Can you do me a favor though and make sure we don't do X because actor A has a problem with that. So just find an alt for that end of the scene. Great. Make yourself a note, keep pitching. And you'll take all that information with you and then go write the outline. So it's really the building blocks. Breaking a story is coming up with the building blocks of the episode.
When you're breaking a TV show story, what are the first few things you're trying to figure out?
If it's for a thing that you're writing yourself, right? I mean, you have the idea of what you think the show is. So where it starts, I think, is always like an important thing to nail down. What moment is the first moment of this show for you? What is the way you want to introduce your main character or characters? What's the way that you want the audience to interpret them based on their movement, where they live, how they dress, whatever the key elements are to you. So I think figuring those things out right away is really important. And I would say in pilot writing, I always know how my pilot ends in terms of the broad sense of, I know the ending is going to be that we're going to realize that character A is actually the one who committed the murder and nobody else knows it, right? That's going to be the reveal at the end of the pilot. So everything I'm writing is writing towards that. And that'll help you sort of know like, oh, I don't have enough twists or turns or that kind of thing. So I feel like knowing how you start, knowing how you want to introduce your characters, and knowing where the pilot is ending, to me, are the most important things when you're trying to then go break the story. When you're breaking it in a room with other writers, I think, having tent poles of the episode are what we refer to it as, of like, you can not necessarily know how the episode's supposed to end other than, I know we're supposed to get to the point where he admits he loves her at the end of the episode. I'm not quite sure how to get there, but I know that's how we're ending. And I know at the midpoint, we need to have something go wrong where everybody's at each other's throats and they're going to have to recover from that for the rest of the episode. And then my idea for how to start the episode is X. And then your team can help you fill in all the other stuff in between. That's the joy of having a writer's room, is you don't need to have all the answers like you do when you're writing your pilot. You can say, here's what I have. And then everybody else joins together to help you fill in the parts that you don't have. And you don't have to take every idea that comes unless it's from your showrunner, and then you kind of do. But if someone pitches something that you don't love, it's okay to be like, can we try and beat that? Like, I'm not sure I really want to go down that road. And if your showrunner likes it and may make you do it, but it's fine to be like, can we come up with some alts for that? And then you pitch the version you like best to your showrunner. And sometimes they're like, oh, I love that. And that conversation's over. And sometimes they're like, not sure about that act out for Act 3, though. And then you can be like, well, we had some other ideas in the room. And you can pitch the thing you didn't love, but that someone in the room pitched. And maybe the showrunner's going to be like, yes, do that. Okay. Because it's not your show, so you do it. When it's your pilot, you get to make all the choices until you're doing it for a studio or a network. And then they can say to you, I don't like the act out for Act 3.
Or I don't do notes.
Yes.
But that sounds like that's what the beauty of the cards is, or doing it with a board, is that it's movable parts. Yes. And so you can show them, if you say, okay, we can try it, even though maybe in your mind you're like, this is never going to work, but we'll go with it, we'll try it. So you move it here, and then you show, okay, if I move that, then I have to move this here. And then it's kind of there for you to see.
Yes. And that's the best part of it, is like you try it, and then everyone can see like, oh, wait, that means that like now all the actions shifted to the middle of the episode and we don't have anything up here. So how do we fix that? And maybe it's moving back the thing that you just moved, and we find a different solution for here. So it allows you to see it and then have the conversation. And I think, the story that I love about why I'm still a note card girl, like I have boards like in my house that I just pull out and like stick note cards to them. And I have one up on the wall. And part of the reason that I am a note card girl is because of the legendary story of Stephen Bachcho and the Hill Street Blues pilot, which when they first screened it was kind of a disaster. And he was like, give me a chance to fix it. And he went back to his office and he laid the entire episode in note cards out on the floor. And he reassembled the pilot, moving the cards around and pulling cards out. And then that became the pilot that changed television. So being able to put all the cards out and be like, okay, there's just too much in Act 2. That's the problem. Because now that all the cards are lined up, I can just tell Act 2 is too long. So what do I do? Or, you know, just saying like, nope, I need this to happen sooner, and moving the physical card. Now, on a board, you can do that because you're crossing stuff out or, you know, whatever. But to me, it's easier with cards. There's also now the electronic software that we've all had to use during Zoom rooms, like Writers Room Pro or Miro, and, you know, for people who prefer to do it that way. And I think Final Draft even has a board function now. And so even for yourself, you can use those programs if you want to, because you don't want to actually write on physical note cards, or you don't have room to have a whiteboard. You can use those programs to do the same thing.
Just as a side note, do you know, did they have to shoot new scenes for Hill Street Blues, or did they just do it in post?
I believe it was just a recut. I feel like I read Bachcho's book and I feel like it was just a recut. I could be wrong because I haven't read the book since 2016. But yeah, it was just like, it's too long. It's kind of all over the place. And so they went in and they reassembled it. They reimagined it with those cards.